Are you sure this place accepts all kinds of guests?" The question, sharp and whispered but far from subtle, sliced through the perfumed air of Lucille just as Victoria Hale stepped into the dining room. She didn't intend to hear it, didn't want to, but once heard, it lodged itself in her chest like a splinter. For years she had trained herself to ignore whispers about her money, her marriage, her unexpected rise to power after her husband died. Tonight, however, the whisper hit differently. Maybe because Lily's small hand was wrapped inside hers. Maybe because she was tired of holding her breath in every room she entered. Lucille was the kind of high-end French restaurant with white linens, crystal glassware, and soft violin music playing in the background. A place where everyone pretended to be more polite than they felt, where eyes judged more than they blinked. Victoria smoothed the wrinkle on her sleeve, a compulsive gesture she had yet to break, and followed a server to her reserved corner table. A blind date. At 45, she hated the idea as much as she hated the pitying looks from well-meaning friends, but she had run out of polite excuses. "Maybe it'll be good for Lily to see you meet someone new," her best friend Emily had insisted. Lily, now 7, sat across from her mother, swinging her feet silently. It was rare for the girl to be so quiet, but tonight she seemed to feel the stiffness of the room, the tension floating under the chandeliers. "Do you know him, Mom?" she asked, fiddling with the napkin. "No, sweetheart, but Emily says he's nice." "Do you feel nice?" Lily asked, tilting her head. Victoria forced a smile. "I feel open-minded." In truth, she felt uneasy. The kind of uneasy she used to feel walking into boardrooms full of older men who wanted her to fail. The kind of uneasy that whispered she was pretending again. 10 minutes passed, then 15. Their server checked the entrance, then returned with a sympathetic tilt of his head. "It seems your guest is running late, Miss Hale." Of course he was. Men like him always believed their time was worth more than anyone else's. "It's okay," Victoria replied. "We'll wait." But Lily wasn't waiting. Her attention drifted beyond her mother's shoulder. She sat straighter, eyes softening as if watching something warm in a cold room. "Mom," she whispered. "Look." In the far corner of the restaurant, at a table unmistakably out of place among the polished silver and linen napkins, sat a black man in a worn but clean button-up shirt. His posture was relaxed, his smile unguarded as he cut a slice of simple cheese pizza for his daughter. The girl about Lily's age wore a pink dress that had clearly been cherished through many washes. She laughed freely, without fear of being too loud for such a place. They didn't match the restaurant, but somehow they matched each other perfectly. "They look—" Lily hesitated, searching for the right word. "Happy." Victoria followed her daughter's gaze. She expected pity or discomfort to rise in the diners around them, but no. What rose was disdain, the same kind she herself had faced early in her career, before money forced the world to quiet down. The same kind that could make a person feel small in a room designed to make others feel large. "Mom, can we sit with them?" Lily whispered. Victoria blinked. "What?" "Lily, we can't just— Please? Our table feels sad. Sad." The word pierced deeper than she expected. She looked at the empty seat beside her, empty like the 6 years since her husband died, empty like the hollow space success could never truly fill. When she turned back, she heard another voice nearby, one dripping with polite venom. "I truly don't understand why the management allows this sort of presence." The woman didn't bother lowering her voice. She didn't need to. The man in the corner had heard worse, Victoria could tell. He straightened subtly, shoulders tightening, jaw clenching a touch, but he stayed silent for his daughter's sake. That silence, dignified, exhausted, familiar, broke something inside Victoria. She inhaled slowly. "Come on, sweetheart," she told Lily. "Let's go say hello." Lily's face brightened instantly. "Really? Really?" It was the first decision Victoria made that evening, purely from instinct, not image. A small decision, but irreversible. As they approached, the man looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. He was handsome, in a gentle, weathered way, eyes steady, carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much and complained too little. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Victoria began, her voice softer than in any boardroom. "My daughter, well, she hoped the girls could sit together, if that's all right with you." The man hesitated, pulling in a breath as if trying to gauge her intentions. He glanced at her dress, her jewelry, her pristine posture, and then at his own shirt, the pepperoni grease on Amara's plate. Are you sure?" he asked politely. There it was, the caution of a man who had learned the hard way that kindness often came with a hidden hook. Before Victoria could answer, his daughter beamed and tugged Lily's hand. "Sit, your dress looks like mine." In seconds, the two girls were chatting like old friends. The man exhaled, helpless in the way all fathers become when their daughters make decisions faster than they can process. "I'm Daniel," he said at last. "Daniel Brooks." "Victoria Hale," she offered. He paused, recognition flickering behind his eyes. Not admiration, just awareness. She found his reaction oddly refreshing. "Thank you for letting us join you," she added. "You don't have to thank me," he replied gently. "Kids don't see walls unless grown-ups build them." His words unsettled her, in the way truth often does. For a moment, the table felt like neutral ground, a place untouched by status or wounds or expectations. And then, like clockwork, a server approached with a stiff smile. "Is everything all right here?" His tone carried polite condescension, the kind that wasn't meant for her. Daniel shrank a little, shoulders curling inward. "Yes," Victoria answered before he could. "Everything is perfectly fine." She smiled, but there was steel underneath it. The server stepped back, visibly taken aback by her tone. Daniel looked at her, surprised, not used to being defended by anyone, much less a woman who lived in a world that had never welcomed him. Victoria felt the weight of his gaze, not judgmental, but searching. She didn't know it yet, but this was the night her life would begin to shift imperceptibly, then undeniably. And it began not with her blind date, not with her CEO title, but with a simple truth spoken by a 7-year-old girl in a pink dress. This table felt happier. For a moment, Victoria forgot the violin music, the polished silverware, and the hovering glances that usually defined places like Les Ciels. Sitting beside Daniel and watching the two girls chatter was oddly grounding, like stepping into a room where the air finally matched her breathing. Lily and Amara were already discussing school art projects, favorite ice cream flavors, and which cartoon characters were secretly in love. It was astonishing how quickly children built bridges adults spent years avoiding. "I'm glad they get along," Victoria said quietly. Daniel nodded, his hands folded neatly on the table. "Kids usually know what matters before we teach them what doesn't." His voice carried the weight of lived experience, gentle but shaped by storms. The kind of storms that didn't announce themselves, but left permanent marks when they passed. "Do you both live in the city?" she asked, attempting to shift the conversation into something neutral. "Safe. Brooklyn," he replied. "Clinton Hill. Not the fancy side," he added with a half-smile, one corner of his mouth lifting as if he'd said the line 1,000 times before. "But the side with better neighbors." She chuckled lightly. "There's more value in good neighbors than good wallpaper." "Then you'd fit right in," he said. She wasn't sure whether it was a compliment or simple truth. Either way, it warmed her more than it should have. A server passed behind them, pausing at their table. "Is everything okay here?" he asked again, this time looking directly at Daniel as though expecting trouble. Daniel's spine stiffened a fraction, not enough for the girls to notice, but enough for Victoria to feel. "Everything is fine," she answered pleasantly, but with finality. The server nodded and walked away, though his lingering glance suggested he might return. When he left, Daniel exhaled slowly and reached for his water glass. "You didn't have to do that," he murmured. "Do what?" "Stand up for me." His tone wasn't resentful, just factual, like someone stating he didn't expect umbrellas in a storm. "I didn't stand up for you," Victoria said. "I stood up for what was right." He studied her for a long moment, Most people only do that when it's convenient. She didn't respond, because the truth was heavier than she wanted to admit. For years, she had chosen the convenient path, especially after her husband died. Grief had made her cautious. Leadership had made her strategic. Motherhood had made her guarded. "Maybe I'm overdue for doing something inconvenient," she finally said. Daniel's quiet laugh was genuine. "That makes two of us." The girls interrupted their adult hesitations with the urgency only children understand. "Mommy," Lily whispered loudly, tugging on her sleeve, "can we please get the same dessert as Amara? She says they have chocolate mousse." "It's the best one," Amara proclaimed. Victoria softened. "Of course." She caught Daniel's surprised expression. "What?" "Chocolate mousse at Le Ciel is not cheap," he said cautiously. "It's fine," she assured him. "I invited myself to your table. Least I can do is buy dessert. You don't have to. Maybe I want to." He hesitated, as if weighing pride against kindness. She recognized that tension well. She lived in a world where kindness always came with a calculation, a hidden metric. Something told her Daniel's world didn't work that way. When the desserts arrived, the girls behaved as though world peace had been achieved. Spoons clinking, little gasps of delight, chocolate smudges at the corners of their mouths. For a fleeting moment, no one in the restaurant mattered, not the staring patrons, not the whispering women, not the server who clearly believed Daniel didn't belong here. It was just two families sharing a table. "How long have you been in New York?" she asked Daniel. "My whole life," he replied. "Born in Harlem, moved around a lot after my mother died. Joined the Army at 18, served 12 years, came home, worked as a paramedic until—" His voice trailed off. "Until what?" "Until my wife passed." Victoria's breath paused. "I'm sorry. It was sudden." He rubbed his thumb over the water glass, not looking up. "Aneurysm. One of those things you can't prepare for. One minute she was laughing with me about some silly movie, and the rest didn't need to be spoken. Loss recognizes loss like old friends meeting in silence." "Lily's father died too," Victoria admitted quietly. "Heart attack. He was 46. Daniel looked at her then, not with pity, but with understanding, the kind reserved for people who have walked through the same kind of night. "That's too young," he said softly. "They all are," she murmured. The girls, oblivious to the gravity at the table, began a heated debate about which cartoon princess was most likely to become president. Their innocence made the moment feel both heavier and lighter at once. "Do you ever feel like you're raising your child in two worlds?" Daniel asked suddenly. She blinked. "What do you mean?" "The world you want them to see, and the world you're afraid they'll have to face." Victoria's voice caught slightly. "Every day. Me too." His honesty disarmed her. Leaders rarely heard the truth without polish. In Daniel's world, truth came raw, unvarnished, and unashamed. Soon, a couple at the next table began whispering again, louder this time, making a pointed remark about dress standards. Daniel tensed, and this time, Victoria felt something inside her tighten too. She leaned closer to him. "If you want to leave, we can go," she offered gently. "No," he said, surprising both of them. "My daughter deserves to finish her dessert without feeling like she's trespassing in someone else's air." The quiet strength in his voice stirred something she couldn't name. Lily sneezed chocolate mousse onto her napkin, and both girls burst into giggles, dissolving tension like sugar melting in warm hands. Watching them, Victoria felt a truth she had not allowed herself to admit in a long time. "Mom," Lily said suddenly, "can Amara and her dad come to the little park by our house sometime?" "I'd like that," Amara said confidently before Daniel could answer. Daniel chuckled and nodded. "Maybe we can make that happen." Something warm flickered in Victoria's chest, but before she could speak, her phone buzzed sharply. The name flashing on the screen cut through the warmth like ice water. Richard Cole. She quickly silenced it, but Daniel caught the shift in her expression. "Everything okay?" "Work," she said too quickly. "It's nothing." It wasn't nothing. It was the beginning of something she couldn't yet see, something that would soon force her to confront not just racism or gossip, but betrayal buried deep within her own company. But for now, for this small, fragile moment, she allowed herself to breathe. Daniel watched her, thoughtful, as Lily leaned against her arm. "You know," he said quietly, "I can't picture you hesitating about anything." She smiled faintly. "Maybe that's because you've only known me for an hour. Sometimes an hour tells you more than a year." She met his eyes and, for the first time in a long time, didn't look away. A soft warmth spread through her, unfamiliar yet steady, like a doorway she hadn't realized she had been standing in front of for years. And this evening, unexpected and imperfect, was her first step through it. For a few rare minutes, the world inside Lucille felt almost gentle. The girls chatted, Daniel relaxed enough to laugh once or twice, and Victoria allowed herself to believe, if only briefly, that she could exist in a space without being dissected by 1,000 silent judgments. But peace in a place like this never lasted long. It never did for people like Daniel, and lately it didn't for people like her either. The server returned, his polished shoes whispering against the carpet. He looked directly at Daniel again, bypassing Victoria entirely, as though speaking to her would violate some unspoken hierarchy. "Sir, I just want to make sure everything is acceptable." The tone was courteous, but the meaning behind it was unmistakable. "Don't get too comfortable." Daniel straightened, shoulders tightening, as if preparing for impact. "We're fine," he said, voice clipped but controlled. "Is there a problem?" Victoria asked, her tone even, smooth, accustomed to navigating egos in glass towers. The server blinked, surprised by her interjection. "No, Miss Hale, of course not. We just want every guest to feel at home." "Then you won't mind giving us space to enjoy our evening," she replied with a gentle finality that only powerful women learn to wield. The server excused himself, though his eyes flicker with annoyance. Daniel exhaled slowly, barely audible. "Thank you," he murmured. "You shouldn't have to thank me," she said. "That shouldn't happen." "It does," he replied quietly. "More than you'd think. Less than it used to, but enough to keep me careful." His voice carried exhaustion, not of the evening, but of years. A lifetime of being measured before being met. Lily and Amara were oblivious to the tension. They were now arguing over sprinkles, their voices full and unfiltered. The innocence of it formed a protective shell around the table, even as judgment gathered beyond it. But the restaurant's atmosphere was changing. Victoria felt it first. It was subtle at the edges, the shift of gaze, the slight hush, the undertone of interest mixed with disapproval. Someone had recognized her. Not unusual, but tonight, she wasn't alone, and that made the attention sharper, less forgiving. A middle-aged couple across the aisle leaned in, whispering behind their menus. "Is that Victoria Hale?" "God. It is. Who is that man with her?" "No idea. Doesn't look like the men she's usually with. Do you think he's?" "I doubt it. Maybe she's trying to look charitable." The words floated across the room like smoke thin, suffocating. Daniel heard it. Victoria knew he did, because he stiffened like someone bracing against wind-driven sand. She wanted to tell him to ignore it, that people like that didn't matter, but she knew better. Words always matter. They can bruise without touching skin. Daniel leaned forward slightly, not looking at her but watching his daughter. "I don't want Amara exposed to this," he said softly. "To what exactly?" she asked gently. "To being in a place where people think she doesn't belong." "She belongs anywhere she has a smile," Victoria replied. "And right now, she's smiling bigger than half this room ever has." That earned her a small smile from him, a genuine one. "You have a way of saying things," he said. "I don't know if it's comforting or dangerous." "I get that a lot," she admitted. Another wave of whispers drifted toward them. This time it wasn't just judgment. It was curious, sharpened, almost hungry. Victoria recognized the tone instantly. She had heard it at shareholder meetings, board dinners, charity events where nobody cared about the cause unless it came with a photo opportunity. But this was worse. These people weren't analyzing a CEO. They were analyzing the sight of a wealthy white woman sitting with a black single father and his daughter, and they didn't like the picture. The next blow came from a different direction. The restaurant manager. A thin man with an immaculate tie, gliding toward them with a pained expression as though forced into an unpleasant duty. "Miss Hale," he greeted, ignoring Daniel entirely. "May I speak with you for a moment?" "You may speak right here," she replied pleasantly. "We have nothing to hide." He hesitated, then forced a professional smile. "Of course, I just wanted to ensure your dining experience meets your expectations." She raised a brow. Why wouldn't it? His eyes flickered first toward Daniel, then away. He cleared his throat. "We've had a few patrons express concern about seating arrangements." Daniel's jaw clenched. Victoria felt a surge of heat rise in her chest. "Concern?" she repeated, voice dangerously soft. "This restaurant prides itself on providing a harmonious atmosphere for all guests," he said carefully. "And sometimes certain combinations—" "Combinations?" she interrupted, each syllable sharp as crystal. "Are you referring to my presence or Mr. Brooks?" The manager swallowed. "Please understand, Miss Hale, we simply want to avoid misunderstandings. The only misunderstanding," she said, "is thinking my table requires your supervision." Lily looked up, sensing the tension. Amara paused mid-laugh. Daniel placed a calming hand on his daughter's back. The manager stepped back, blinking nervously. "My apologies," he said. "Enjoy your meal." As he left, Victoria noticed the tremble of embarrassment on his face. She recognized that emotion. It was the one people wore after realizing they had underestimated the wrong person. When he disappeared, Daniel turned to her with careful gratitude. "That was something," he said. "I've learned that polite prejudice is still prejudice," she replied, "and it doesn't deserve politeness in return." He studied her with quiet intensity, the kind of gaze that evaluated character rather than credentials. "You ever think about how exhausting it is?" he asked. "What? Fighting battles that shouldn't need fighting?" She considered the question, then nodded. "Every day. But I'm trying not to lose the battles inside me anymore." He looked at her for a long moment, and she felt something shift. Not romantic, not yet, but human, real. A recognition of shared weariness and unexpected kinship. Their daughters, meanwhile, had resumed their debate about cartoon princesses, blissfully unaware of the delicate social war unfolding around them. Victoria envied their simplicity. "Mom," Lily suddenly said, tugging her sleeve, "can we come here again with them?" She glanced at Daniel. He shrugged slightly. "If you'd like, I'd like that very much," Victoria said. For the first time in years, she meant it. But even as warmth settled over their table, she sensed, without knowing how, that the outside world was already shifting in response to tonight. And not all of it would be kind. The storm she felt gathering wasn't from the weather, it was human. It was coming. And soon, it would swallow this small moment of peace whole. By the time the dinner plates were cleared, the weight in the room had shifted. The conversation between the adults had grown quieter, more careful, while the girls remained blissfully untouched by the undercurrent flowing beneath the linen-draped tables. It should have been a pleasant evening, unexpected, imperfect, but strangely warm. Yet every second, Victoria felt the gaze of strangers pressing against her skin, as if the entire restaurant held its breath, waiting for her to remember who she was supposed to be. When Lily reached for her glass, her elbow grazed the edge of the dessert plate. It wobbled, then tipped. Chocolate mousse smeared across the pristine tablecloth, a brown arc cutting through white linen like a wound. Lily gasped. "I'm sorry, Mommy," she blurted, panic rising in her voice. Before Victoria could reassure her, the server reappeared, moving quickly, as though summoned by the accident. He stared at the stain, then at Lily, and finally at Daniel, not at Victoria, whose name the reservation bore, but at Daniel, as though he were the one responsible. "We'll need to replace the tablecloth," he said, tight-lipped. The implication was clear. They had inconvenienced the restaurant. Again. "It was an accident," Victoria replied, her tone cool. "She's a child." "Of course," the server said, but his eyes flicked toward Daniel. Naturally, that single word naturally landed like a stone. Daniel's jaw tightened. He reached for his wallet automatically, a reflex born from countless moments of being blamed for what wasn't his fault. "Daniel," Victoria said softly, stopping him with her voice alone. "No." The server hesitated, sensing the shift in power. "Ma'am," he began, "it's just—" "Bring another tablecloth," she said. "And please speak to me, not Mr. Brooks." The way his name left her mouth steady, respectful, was a quiet defiance. The server smiled thinly and retreated. But the damage had been done. Lily's eyes filled with tears, not from fear of punishment, but from something deeper: confusion, shame, a sense that she'd caused pain she didn't understand. "Mom," she whispered, voice tiny, "did I do something wrong?" "No, baby," Victoria murmured, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Adults forget how to behave sometimes. That's not on you." Across from them, Amara slipped her hand into Lily's. "It's okay," she said simply. "My dad says accidents don't make bad people." Daniel smiled at his daughter's attempt at wisdom, despite the tension radiating from him. "Smart kid you're raising," Victoria said quietly. "She gets it from her mom," Daniel replied, and the brief shadow that crossed his face told her that ache still lived close to the surface. When the bill arrived, the server placed it in front of Daniel, not Victoria. Not the woman wearing a watch worth more than most cars on the street. No, he chose the man he assumed wasn't supposed to be there. The insult was almost elegant in its subtlety. Victoria reached for the check instantly. "I'll take that," she said. "Miss Hale," the server began. "We assumed." "You assumed incorrectly." Her voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen. It didn't need to. Authority settled around her like a cloak, calm and immovable. The server backed away. But the girls were watching, their young faces puzzled in a way that felt heavier than anger. And that was what broke Victoria. Not the server's prejudice, not the patron's whispers, but the look on her daughter's face, like she was witnessing something that should never have existed in the world her mother tried so hard to build for her. When they stood to leave, the manager intercepted them again. "Miss Hale, I hope the evening was satisfactory?" The pause before the final word was unmistakable. It was the pause of someone asking for permission to judge. "No," she replied simply. "It wasn't." The manager blinked. Well, if there was an issue." "There were several," she said. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't list them. She didn't need to. The truth was woven through every interaction she'd watched, endured, and finally refused to ignore. Daniel shifted, uncomfortable with attention. "Victoria, it's fine," she said. "I'm done pretending things are fine when they're not." The manager stiffened. "We value our clientele deeply. If there was a misunderstanding—" "There was a pattern," she corrected. "That's different." His face flushed, but he nodded stiffly and stepped aside. They walked out into the crisp night air, the city buzzing gently beyond the glow of streetlights. The moment the doors shut behind them, Lily tugged on her mother's hand. "Mom," she said, eyes glossy, "why were those people so mean to Amara's daddy?" The question struck harder than any comment inside that restaurant. Victoria froze, tasting the bitterness of her own silence, the weight of all the times she had looked away in her life. Not just tonight, but in boardrooms, fundraisers, charity galas where people wore masks made of courtesy and spoke cruelty in coded language. She knelt beside Lily. "Sometimes people judge what they don't understand," she said softly. "Sometimes they make others feel small so they can feel big." "But that's wrong," Lily insisted. "You should have told them to stop." Daniel shifted, surprised, but staying respectfully quiet. His daughter watched too, her wide eyes searching Victoria's face for an answer. "You're right," Victoria whispered, shame curling in her stomach. "I should have." "Then why didn't you?" Lily asked. Not unkindly, not accusing, just wanting the truth. The innocence in the question cracked something open inside her. Daniel looked down, giving her space, but his silence carried an echo. "I know that silence. I've lived under it." Victoria swallowed. "I got scared," she admitted. "I was afraid of making things worse." Lily shook her head. "Mom, things were already worse." The child's clarity was a blade clean, honest, impossible to ignore. Amara stepped closer and hugged Lily without a word, and the sight made Daniel's expression soften. Victoria rose slowly, realizing her daughter had done what no board member, friend, or advisor had managed in years. She had told her the truth. Not the truth wrapped in courtesy, the truth that mattered. "You girls want to walk together to the corner?" Daniel asked gently, sensing the heaviness of the moment. The two children nodded eagerly and moved ahead, hand in hand, pink dresses swaying under the streetlights. Victoria and Daniel followed behind, silence stretching between them, not uncomfortable, but contemplative. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Kids notice things we try to ignore." "She's right," Victoria murmured. "I failed her in there." "No," he said, shaking his head. "You didn't fail. You hesitated. Happens to the best of us. What matters is what you do next." She looked at him. "And what do you think I should do next?" "Whatever lets your daughter see you stand," he answered softly. "Kids remember what we choose to stay silent about." His words settled deep inside her, heavier than the cold night air. As they reached the corner, the girls ran ahead, spinning in the light of a passing cab. For the first time in a long time, Victoria didn't feel like a CEO, or a widow, or a woman performing strength. She felt like a mother with a choice, and tonight, her daughter had given her the truth she needed to make it. By the next morning, the evening at La Ciel felt like a distant memory, soft around the edges, tinged with warmth and regret. Yet underneath it all, a pressure had settled in Victoria's chest, the kind she recognized from years of navigating boardrooms where danger never announced itself, only arrived. She woke early, as she always did, slipping out of bed before dawn to prepare Lily's breakfast and answer the emails that accumulated overnight. But today, the world had woken before she did. Her phone buzzed against the marble countertop, once, twice, then relentlessly, vibrating with the insistence of trouble brewing. She frowned, unlocking the screen. 52 notifications. Her stomach tightened. The first message was from Emily. "Vic, call me the moment you see this. Seriously. Now." Another message followed. "There's a video. It's everywhere." A chill slid down her spine. Before she could open the link, Lily padded into the kitchen in her unicorn pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, can we have pancakes instead of oatmeal today?" Victoria forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Go turn on the lights. It's still dark." As Lily skipped away, humming, Victoria braced herself and tapped the link. The video loaded instantly, shot from a phone, grainy but clear enough. It captured the moment in the restaurant when the manager approached their table. It showed Victoria speaking sternly, the server shrinking back, and the girls looking between adults with wide, uncertain eyes. But the caption above the video twisted everything. "Billionaire CEO causes scene at local restaurant guests claim she harassed staff to impress a mystery man." Victoria's breath caught. Another headline. "Is Victoria Hale using a struggling father for PR points?" And beneath it, comments, thousands of them. "Typical rich woman trying to look woke. I bet she staged it. What kind of mother drags her kid into a stunt like this? Who's the guy? Some charity case?" Victoria felt the room tilt. They didn't just misinterpret the night, they gutted it, stripped it of truth, and rebuilt it into something unrecognizable. She clicked another notification, this one a news alert. Her heart froze. Hale Enterprises stock opens low, amid CEO controversy. Stock instability, shareholder anxiety, rumors of internal tension. It had taken less than 12 hours for the internet to weaponize a moment of simple humanity. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath. She had survived worse storms, but this storm threatened more than her image. It threatened her company, her daughter's stability, and the fragile trust she'd just begun building with Daniel. As she was processing the chaos, her phone buzzed again, this time with an incoming call. Richard Cole. She considered ignoring it, but ignoring Richard was never an option. She swiped to answer. "Richard," she said, her voice cool, controlled. "I assume you've seen the video? Seen it?" He scoffed. "Victoria, it's on every financial news feed in the country. Do you have any idea what this is doing to our shareholders? Our partners? Our board?" "I didn't ask to be recorded," she replied. "I didn't stage anything, and I certainly didn't do anything wrong. Public perception says otherwise," Richard snapped. "For God's sake, Victoria, you're the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. You can't be seen fraternizing with strangers in low-income clothing. It's reckless." She clenched her jaw. "He's not a stranger. He's a father, and that's all you need to know." "Well, investors want to know a lot more," Richard said. "And they're nervous. Nervous investors make nervous decisions. You need to do damage control immediately." "Damage control for what? For being decent?" "Decency isn't profitable," Richard replied coldly. "Optics are." She felt a familiar heaviness creep in. "We'll schedule a press statement later today," she said. "We'll clarify the situation." "Oh, you'll clarify it," Richard said, "but you won't like what the board says afterward." The call ended abruptly. Victoria set the phone down, her heart pounding. She prepared Lily's breakfast with hands that trembled slightly, hiding the shake each time her daughter looked up. When she dropped Lily off at school, she forced herself to smile as if nothing were wrong, hugging her a little too tightly before letting her go. On the drive back, she tried calling Daniel. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. She worried about him, about Amara, about how the video might be affecting them. She didn't have to wait long for clarity. When she pulled back into her parking garage, her phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail from Daniel. His voice was steady but tinged with exhaustion. "Hey, Victoria. I saw the video. Didn't expect to wake up with my face in the news. But that's where we are, I guess. People at work are already talking. Someone called me a celebrity." A humorless laugh. "Look, I just want to make sure my daughter doesn't get dragged into this. She's been through enough. If you need me to stay away for a while, I understand." Victoria closed her eyes, shaken by the quiet resignation in his voice. She had seen men crumble under pressure in the corporate world, but Daniel's voice wasn't crumbling. It was bracing for the kind of impact life had already taught him to expect. Meanwhile, in a high-rise office several blocks away, Richard Cole was forwarding the edited video to select board members with the subject line, "Urgent. CEO behavioral concern." But that was not all he sent. Attached below the video was a second file, a still frame of Daniel and his daughter from the restaurant, labeled only with the words, "Potential liability." Victoria didn't know it yet, but the storm she feared had already been set in motion by hands far more deliberate than the internet's. Back in her quiet kitchen, Victoria replayed Daniel's voicemail. She could hear it now, the fatigue of a man who had spent his entire life being misjudged by people who never bothered to meet his eyes. People like the ones last night. People like Richard. She whispered into the silent room, "You shouldn't have to stay away from anyone." The city outside hummed with its usual morning rhythm horns, footsteps, the distant sirens of a world always in motion. But for Victoria, the day had shifted. The pressure she felt wasn't just public scrutiny anymore. It was the unmistakable warning of something deeper, darker, and closer to home. And though she didn't yet know the scale of the betrayal forming in the shadows of her own company, she sensed one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't just a scandal. It was the beginning of a fight she had avoided for far too long. The morning unfolded with the uneasy rhythm of a city that seemed to know something she didn't. By the time Victoria arrived at the Hale Enterprises headquarters, a towering glass monolith overlooking Midtown, her phone had already buzzed itself into exhaustion. News alerts. Board members requesting urgent clarification. Investors expressing concern about leadership stability. Even her assistant, Megan, had texted before dawn. "Brace yourself. It's bad." As Victoria stepped into the lobby, a hush followed her. Executives who usually greeted her with polished smiles now offered stiff nods, whispering to each other with the subtlety of schoolchildren. She could feel the weight of the viral video in every sideways glance. Not curiosity, not confusion, judgment, the kind that sticks like wet paint. Megan rushed toward her, clutching a tablet and looking paler than usual. "Good morning, Miss Hale." "It doesn't look like a good morning," Victoria replied. "It's not." Megan lowered her voice. "The video has been played on 3 morning news programs already. They're calling it the LaCiel incident. And Richard has been in the PR wing since 7. He's working with communications." That meant one thing. He was rewriting the narrative before she even had a chance to speak. "Set up a meeting with the communications team in an hour," Victoria said, "and tell them not to release anything without my approval." "Yes, ma'am," Megan replied, though uncertainty flickered in her eyes, uncertainty about who truly held the reins today. Upstairs, the executive floor was buzzing. The moment Victoria walked through, voices died mid-sentence. People pretended to be busy, pretending not to watch her walk by, but their screens told the truth. Frozen frames of her face at the restaurant, headlines flashing bold and merciless. Hale CEO loses composure in public scuffle. Unstable leadership? Investors want answers. Mysterious dinner companion raises eyebrows. She pushed open the door to her office, and only once she was inside did she allow herself a long, exhaled breath. Across town, in a very different world, Daniel Brooks was dealing with his own firestorm. At the repair shop where he worked, the break-room TV was tuned to a morning show. His face appeared on the screen as he poured himself a coffee. "That's him," a coworker muttered, pointing a greasy finger at him. "Our celebrity," another coworker whistled. "Didn't know you were dining with royalty." Daniel forced a tight smile. "I wasn't." "So what were you doing in a place like that, man?" Someone else chimed in. "I mean, no offense, but that's not exactly a Brooklyn Dad kind of restaurant." Daniel said nothing. He'd learned long ago that answering questions asked in that tone only fanned the flames. "You dating her or something?" a younger tech joked, smacking Daniel's shoulder. "Come on, dude, share the secrets." Something inside Daniel thinned like a stretched wire. "I was having dinner with my daughter," he said quietly. "That's all." "Sure," the young tech laughed. "The video definitely makes it look like that's all." The room erupted in chuckles. Only one coworker, Marcus, a man in his 60s with soft eyes and a lifetime of experience, stayed quiet. He watched Daniel carefully, seeing past the surface. "Leave him alone," Marcus said finally, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone who had fought his own battles. "The world's cruel enough without your help." The room silenced. Daniel shot Marcus a grateful glance, but his chest still felt tight. Amara was at school. He prayed the video hadn't reached the kids yet. Children could be merciless without meaning harm. Back at Hale Enterprises, Victoria was deep in crisis mode. The communications team sat around the conference table, some confident, others skittish, each waiting for instruction. One man cleared his throat. "Miss Hale, we believe the best course of action is an apology. A brief, controlled statement expressing regret for the misunderstanding." "I didn't do anything wrong," Victoria replied. "I won't apologize for defending a man who was being treated unfairly. The public doesn't care about nuance," he said. "They care about narrative." Another woman leaned forward. "People think you used that man for optics, Victoria. They think you staged the scene for social points." Victoria felt a flicker of anger, not fiery cold, sharp. "I don't stage human decency," she said. The room shifted uncomfortably. Just then, the door opened. Richard Cole stepped in, smooth as always, adjusting his cufflinks with an ease that made her jaw tighten. "Victoria," he said warmly, "glad to see you're taking this seriously." He sat at the head of the table, uninvited. "We're discussing response strategy," she said. "Yes," Richard replied. "I sent the team a draft statement already." A sincere expression of regret, plus reassurance that Hale Enterprises stands for professionalism. "That implies I acted unprofessionally." "You did," he replied calmly. "At least, that's how it appears. Optics, Victoria. You know how fragile the market is. We can't appear chaotic." She held his gaze. "We won't. If you stop making decisions without me." The room froze. Richard smiled, thin, patronizing. "We'll let the board decide that, won't we?" He stood. "There's an emergency meeting this afternoon. I expect you'll be there." She felt the walls shift, the ground tilt. This wasn't about the video. Not truly. Richard had been waiting for an opportunity like this. The LaCiel clip was merely fuel. Another reminder that in the world of power, betrayal was rarely loud. It was quiet, calculated, and always timed to strike when one was already bleeding. Hours later, as she rode the elevator down to the parking garage, her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Amara heard the kids talking at school. She's confused. I'm keeping her home tomorrow." Then, after a long pause, "If all this chaos came from being seen with us, maybe it's best if we keep some distance for now. No hard feelings." She stared at the message, her chest tightening. She typed, erased, typed again. Finally, she wrote, "Distance isn't the solution, not for the girls, and not for us." But as she hit send, she was no longer sure if she believed it. Tonight would decide everything. The video, the company, the board, her future, Daniel's safety, and the storm that had begun with whispers in a French restaurant was now spreading through the city like wildfire, judging, twisting, reshaping what had been a moment of sincerity into something unrecognizable. And somewhere deep inside Hale Enterprises, someone was feeding that fire. Someone who wanted her gone. And they were just getting started. The night of the charity gala arrived wrapped in the kind of brittle elegance that always made Victoria uneasy. Events like this were supposed to showcase compassion, yet they so often served as mirrors reflecting who held power, who wanted it, and who pretended not to. Hale Enterprises was the headline sponsor, and that meant Victoria could not avoid attending, no matter how much the swirling controversy exhausted her. The venue, a renovated art museum in Midtown, glowed beneath chandeliers that seemed to drip with liquid gold. Guests floated through the atrium in tuxedos and sequined gowns, their laughter bright, their eyes sharp. Every handshake felt like an assessment. Every smile carried a score. When Victoria stepped out of the car, camera flashes greeted her instantly. She kept her posture straight, shoulders high, chin lifted, not from vanity, but survival. The board meeting earlier had been worse than she'd expected. Richard's allies had circled like vultures, repeating concerns about CEO stability and brand integrity, treating her not as a leader but as a liability. She had defended herself calmly, but every word felt like stepping through fog while the ground crumbled beneath her feet. Tonight was her chance to regain control of the narrative. Or so she told herself. Megan walked beside her, whispering updates. "The press wants a comment. I've rerouted them twice already. No statements tonight," Victoria replied. "We focus on the charity." "Understood." As Victoria approached the entrance, she noticed a familiar figure standing off to the side, adjusting the collar of a modest suit that didn't quite fit him. Daniel. Her breath caught. She hadn't expected him, hadn't dared to, but there he was, holding Amara's small hand as she stared wide-eyed at the glowing museum facade. "You came," Victoria whispered as she approached them. Daniel gave a half shrug. Amara wanted to see what her art teacher called the big fancy building. And his eyes softened. "I didn't want our last conversation to be about distance," Something eased inside her. Something she hadn't realized had been clenched. Amara, wearing a pale blue dress, beamed at Victoria. "Hi, Miss Hale. Daddy said I have to behave 'cause this place probably costs more than our whole street." Daniel grimaced. "I didn't say that exactly." Victoria laughed genuinely, unexpectedly. "You both look perfect," she said, "and I'm glad you're here." Lily arrived moments later with Emily, squealing and hugging Amara as if they hadn't spent yesterday together at school. Their joy felt like a small rebellion against everything cruel the world had tried to impose this week. For a brief moment, Victoria let herself believe that tonight could repair something. Inside, the gala shimmered with opulence. Strings swelled from a live orchestra on the balcony. Servers drifted past with champagne flutes balanced on silver trays. Yet beneath all the glitter, tension crawled through the air like static. Guests stared, some politely, some not. A cluster of donors whispered behind feathered masks used for the evening's theme. Victoria ignored them and focused on her daughters, because Amara felt as much like Lily's sister as she did her friend, and on Daniel, who kept close enough to reassure her without overshadowing her presence. After an hour of mingling, it was time for the scheduled speech. The lights dimmed as Victoria was escorted to the stage. Her heels clicked softly against the polished floor, each step echoing through the atrium. As she stood behind the podium, the crowd falling silent before her, she felt the familiar rush of leadership, the kind that steadied her spine even as her heart raced. She began speaking about the company's mission, about community growth and affordable housing, about the responsibility of those with power to protect those without it. Her voice was clear, measured, confident, but beneath the surface, anxiety circled like a predator. Halfway through the speech, as she shifted her weight, a sharp pain shot through her chest, not physical, but sudden and overwhelming. The room tilted. Her vision blurred at the edges. For a moment she thought it was simply nerves, an aftershock of the week's chaos. But then her breath caught, shallow and uneven. She blinked hard, trying to focus on the glassy eyes of the audience. The microphone wavered in her grip. Someone in the crowd whispered urgently. Another stood halfway, unsure whether to approach. The orchestra faltered. Then the world snapped sideways. Victoria collapsed. Gasps cracked through the room like shattering crystal. Chairs scraped. Guests surged to their feet. Panic rippled outward, sharp and immediate. But through the chaos came movement fast, precise, purposeful. Daniel vaulted onto the stage before anyone else even processed what was happening. "Give me space," he commanded, his voice cutting through the noise with authority born from years of military training. He dropped to his knees beside Victoria, checking her pulse, supporting her neck, ensuring her airway remained open. "Victoria," he murmured firmly, "I need you to breathe. Slow, steady. You're okay. I'm here." Megan hovered nearby, terrified. "Is she having a heart attack?" "No," Daniel said, assessing her breathing, the tremor in her hands. "It's a panic-induced syncope. She fainted under stress. She's going to be fine." He lifted her carefully, lowering her onto her side to stabilize her. Photographers circled, ignoring Daniel's repeated commands to give space. Their camera flashes burst like lightning, cold, intrusive. Security finally stepped in, forming a shield around the small circle on the stage. Victoria's eyes fluttered open for a moment. She saw lights, shapes, and Daniel's face steady, calm, resolute. "You're safe," he told her. "Stay still." Tears stung her eyes, not from fear, but from the unbearable fact that he was the only person in this room who moved toward her, not away. Paramedics arrived and carefully lifted her onto a stretcher. Daniel stepped back, only when they assured him she was stable. The crowd parted as they carried her out, whispers trailing behind them like dust. "Is she unwell? She's losing control of the company. This is bad for the stock." Who was that man? Security? Medical? He seemed awfully familiar. By the time the ambulance doors closed, the internet was already devouring the moment. Someone had caught the collapse on video. Someone else had uploaded it. And in less than 10 minutes, the clip began circulating with edited captions that left out the only detail that mattered. Daniel had saved her. Back inside the museum, guests resumed their champagne and violin music, the drama fading into spectacle. But for Daniel, as he stood outside beneath the night sky with Amara clutching his hand, the evening was not a spectacle. It was a warning. The world had turned its eyes onto Victoria and onto him, and he knew, with a sinking certainty, that the truth of tonight would not survive the version the public was hungry to believe. But he also knew something else, something heavier. Victoria Hale had just fallen in a room full of powerful people, and only one man had caught her. By the following morning, the city felt colder, as if the night itself had witnessed the gala and decided to withdraw its warmth. Victoria lay in her bed, the soft hum of the heart monitor near her fading as the nurse unhooked her from the last of the equipment. She was physically stable, no heart attack, no stroke, just a collapse triggered by stress and exhaustion. But physical stability meant little when her world was already unraveling outside the hospital walls. Megan stood by the window, hands clasped, eyes tight with worry. "You should rest another day," she urged. "The board won't fault you for taking time." "The board will fault me for breathing wrong," Victoria said softly. Then, after a beat, "What's the damage?" Megan hesitated. "You should really. Tell me." Megan handed her the tablet. "The clips are everywhere, and the one that went viral first is the edited one." Victoria didn't want to look. She had to. The video played, her on stage, mid-speech, stumbling, collapsing, then cut. No Daniel, no rescue, no context, just her body crumpling under bright lights. The caption underneath read, "Is Hale Enterprises CEO cracking under pressure?" Variant headlines scrolled by. Leadership in question. Investors concerned after public breakdown. Is this the end of Victoria Hale's tenure? A muscle in her jaw twitched. "Where's the full video?" she asked. "We don't know," Megan said quietly. "It isn't circulating. Only this one." That was impossible. Hundreds of people had been recording. Someone had to have captured Daniel saving her. Someone had to have posted it. Videos like that didn't just disappear unless someone made them disappear. Meanwhile, across the river in Brooklyn, Daniel sat at his tiny kitchen table, elbows on his knees, staring at his phone in disbelief. The internet was ripping Victoria apart, and him too. A new comment thread scrolled past. Who was the man on stage? Security? A boyfriend? An opportunist? It looked staged. Why would a random guy jump on the stage that fast? Sketchy. Probably part of the PR stunt. Daniel rubbed his temples. "A PR stunt," he muttered. "Right." Amara came in rubbing her eyes, still in her fuzzy pajamas. "Daddy? Yeah? Baby? Miss Hale, okay?" His chest tightened. "She will be. Kids at school say she fainted because she was scared." "I don't think she gets scared. She's human," Daniel said softly. "Even strong people get scared sometimes." The door buzzed suddenly, startling them both. When Daniel opened it, his friend Luis, who worked at a local media firm, stood in the hallway, face serious. "We need to talk," Luis said. "Inside." Daniel stepped aside. Luis entered, lowering his voice. "Listen. I can't stay long. But something's going on with the footage from the gala. My supervisor got an email last night, anonymous, telling us not to run the full clip." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "But you have it?" Luis nodded. "I backed up the raw file before they deleted it from our system. And Daniel," he hesitated, then tapped on his phone. "The full version looks very different." He hit play. The video showed everything. Victoria faltering, collapsing, and Daniel catching her, easing her down, giving her medical support with unwavering calm. It was a hero's moment. It was the truth. It was gone from the internet. "Why would someone suppress this?" Daniel asked. Luis exhaled. "Because the other version sells a better story." "Better for who?" Someone with a lot of interest in making her look unstable. Back across town, Victoria stepped out of the hospital and into the waiting black SUV. The moment she sat down, her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from a number she hadn't seen in years. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" a familiar voice replied. "Victoria. It's James. Long time." Her breath hitched. James Harrison, former Hale Enterprises corporate counsel, her husband's closest friend before he died, and a man who left the company after clashing with Richard. "James, why are you calling?" "Because," he said slowly, "I woke up this morning to 5 different board members telling me you fainted on stage. And one of them said Richard already scheduled a meeting to discuss your succession strategy." Succession. The word felt like ice water down her spine. "They think I'm stepping down," she said. "No," James corrected. "They think they can push you down." As the SUV pulled onto the Queensboro Bridge, Victoria stared out the window, watching the river glint like a blade beneath the rising sun. "James," she said quietly, "someone leaked the clip. Edited. Cut." "Of course they did," he replied. A woman in power collapses once, and suddenly the whole world doubts she deserves the power at all. She swallowed hard. "Do you think Richard?" "I think," James interrupted, "you already know the answer, and I think you need allies who aren't afraid of him." She didn't respond. She didn't have to. By afternoon, she was back in her office, steadying herself before facing another wave of crisis. But before she could sit down, Megan rushed in. "Miss Hale, look." She held up her phone. A new video was circulating. But it wasn't the full clip. It was something else. The restaurant clip from Le Ciel. Further edited. The version now cut Victoria's defense of Daniel entirely. It only showed her confronting staff, stern, seemingly unprovoked. The caption underneath read, "Aggressive CEO strikes again. Public meltdown or pattern of behavior." Victoria felt her stomach drop. Who is doing this? The question escaped like a whisper. Megan's voice trembled. "It feels deliberate." "It is deliberate," Victoria replied. "Someone is building a case against me." Meanwhile, Daniel sat on his couch, phone ringing non-stop from reporters, from curious co-workers, from strangers who somehow found his number. Amara sat beside him, coloring a picture of 2 girls holding hands. "Daddy," she said softly, "why are people mad at Miss Hale?" He didn't know how to explain how the world could punish a woman for falling and punish him for catching her. "People don't understand the truth," he finally said. "And some don't want to. But you do," Amara whispered. "And Miss Hale does." He nodded. "Yes. And that means we fight for it." Underneath his words, however, he felt the first chill of danger. Not physical danger. Reputation, stability, safety. Everything. A single father guarded fiercely. Everything that could crumble with one wrong public narrative. And then came the final message of the day, one that neither he nor Victoria expected. Luis texted Daniel again. "Brother, I found something else. You need to see the email metadata. Someone inside Hale Enterprises sent the edited clip to the press from a private server." At the same moment in her office, Megan approached Victoria with trembling hands. "Miss Hale," she whispered, "IT found something." The Le Ciel clip was sent out from an internal email, time-stamped exactly 2 minutes after you fainted. "Who sent it?" Victoria asked, though she already knew. Megan swallowed. It was forwarded from Richard Cole's office. Victoria sat down slowly, feeling the gravity of betrayal settle on her like a weight. Everything was becoming clear now. Someone had erased the truth. Someone had weaponized her humanity. Someone had turned her compassion into fuel for her downfall, and that someone was counting on her not to fight back. But they were wrong, because Victoria Hale was done absorbing blows in silence. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Daniel Brooks tightened his grip around his phone with the same realization. The truth was out there. It was being buried, and they were the only 2 people who could dig it up before it disappeared forever. By the time evening settled over the city, Victoria's office felt like the last quiet place in a world tilting toward chaos. Outside, Manhattan glowed with its usual restless brilliance, yellow cabs threading through traffic, streetlights blinking awake one by one, but inside her corner suite, everything felt still, too still. She sat behind her desk, hands clasped tightly, reviewing the evidence IT had delivered, the edited video file, the metadata trail, the internal routing logs, all pointing unmistakably back to Richard Cole's office. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was strategic, calculated, deliberate, designed to fracture her leadership at its weakest moment. A soft knock at the door pulled her back. "Miss Hale?" Megan stepped in, her expression hesitant. "The board has scheduled the emergency meeting. It's happening tomorrow morning at 9. Her fate would be decided over coffee and pastries while the skyline watched from outside the glass. "Thank you, Megan," she said quietly. "Go home, get some rest." Megan hesitated, then whispered, "For what it's worth, I trust you all the way through this." When she left, Victoria allowed herself a small exhale. Trust felt like a scarce currency lately, and she was nearly bankrupt. Her phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "We need to talk, in person." She stared at it for a moment before replying. "When?" "Now, if you can." She grabbed her coat. The night air outside hit her with a crisp bite, but walking helped clear the fog in her mind. She met Daniel in a small neighborhood park between their homes, a place quiet enough for privacy but open enough not to draw attention. Daniel stood beneath a street lamp, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders set in a way that told her he was carrying something heavier than he wanted to admit. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You sounded serious," she replied. "More than usual," he nodded. "I got the full video. The one from the gala." She inhaled sharply. "The real one?" "Yeah." He held up his phone. "Luis, you remember, my friend from the media company. He backed it up before it got wiped. And Victoria, someone tried hard to wipe it." He pressed play. The glow from the screen illuminated their faces. There she was, collapsing under the stage lights, but then came the part the world hadn't seen. Daniel, rushing to her side, steady and skilled, his voice calm, his hands sure, his presence the anchor the moment needed. Watching it made something in her chest twist, relief, gratitude, sorrow, anger, all tangled together. "This should have been everywhere," she whispered. "It should have silenced the lies." "Someone didn't want that," Daniel said. "And it gets worse." He pulled up another file, an audio recording, a voice she recognized instantly. "Richard, tank the stock a bit. Fear makes the board compliant. Send the edited clip. We need momentum before the vote." Victoria's stomach dropped. Hearing the betrayal was infinitely worse than suspecting it. "He did this," she said softly. "All of it. He set you up," Daniel confirmed. "And he dragged us into it." Victoria pressed a hand against her forehead. "I knew he was ambitious. I didn't know he was willing to burn the company down to take it." Daniel's expression softened. "Ambition's not the problem," he said quietly. "Cowardice is. Men like him don't fight fair because they don't believe they can win fair." She looked up at him then, and for the first time that day, something inside her steadied, grounded. "You always know what to say," she murmured. "Not always," he replied with a faint smile. "Just when it matters." They stood in silence for a moment, the street lamp casting a warm glow around them. Finally, Victoria spoke. "Tomorrow they'll try to remove me. Unless you show them the truth." She shook her head. "It won't matter to some of them. They've wanted me out for years. A woman CEO looks good in PR brochures until she stops smiling and starts making decisions." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Victoria, your daughter needs to see you fight. Not just for the company, for yourself, for the truth." The words struck deep. Lily. Her daughter's small face flashed in her mind, her honesty, her bravery, her disappointment, when Victoria hesitated at the restaurant. "I'm tired," she admitted. voice cracking. "I don't mean exhausted. I mean tired of being the one who absorbs everything, the one who stays composed, the one who people think they can push because I won't break." Daniel reached out, not touching her, but close enough for the gesture to feel like support rather than intrusion. "You didn't break," he said. "You bent. And bending isn't weakness, it's survival." A breath she didn't know she was holding slipped out. "What happens if I lose? Then you walk out with your head high, knowing you told the truth. And if I win? Then you rebuild," he said. "And you teach them what real leadership looks like." She smiled faintly. "You make it sound simple." "It isn't," he said. "But it is right." A gust of wind lifted her hair, and she wrapped her coat tighter around herself. "You should go home," she said softly. "It's late." "I will," he replied. "But one more thing." He met her eyes. "No matter what happens tomorrow, I'm in your corner. Not because you're a CEO. Because you're a good person who tried to do the right thing, and the world punished you for it." Her breath trembled, not from fear, but something gentler, warmer. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to hear that." They parted ways at the park entrance, Daniel walking toward the subway, Victoria toward her driver. But as she reached the car door, her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "Be careful tomorrow. Some of them want more than your resignation." Her blood ran cold. She looked around the street but saw only shadows. "Ma'am?" her driver asked. "Everything all right?" She steadied herself. "Yes," she said. "Take me home." But as the car pulled away, Victoria knew nothing about tomorrow would be all right. Tomorrow would be war. And the line between who wanted truth and who wanted power was about to reveal itself in full. Morning arrived with a pale, metallic light that made the city look like it had been carved from steel. Victoria stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows in her living room, sipping coffee she couldn't taste, feeling the weight of what the next few hours would demand of her. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was something sharper, something that hummed beneath her ribs like a coiled wire ready to snap. Today, the board would decide whether she remained CEO or became another cautionary tale about women in power. She dressed with deliberate precision. A charcoal suit, understated jewelry, hair pulled back, no softness, no vulnerability. But when Lily padded into the room, clutching her stuffed rabbit, everything inside Victoria softened just a little. "Mommy?" Lily whispered. "Are you going to fight the mean people today?" A painful smile tugged at Victoria's lips. "I'm going to tell the truth," she replied. "Sometimes that is the fight." Lily hugged her tightly, small arms fierce around her waist. "Daddy always said to protect people. You should protect yourself too." The unexpected wisdom made Victoria's throat tighten. "I will, sweetheart. I promise." When she finally arrived at Hale Enterprises, the lobby was unusually quiet, as if even the employees sensed the gravity of the day. Eyes followed her, not with judgment this time, but curiosity, fear, hope, something in between. Megan met her at the elevator, her expression taut but determined. "They're all in there already," she whispered. "Richard's been speaking with them for nearly 30 minutes. Of course he had, stacking his deck before the game even began. "Did you bring it?" Victoria asked. Megan nodded, her hand closing around a flash drive hidden in her pocket. "Everything you sent me last night. The full video, the audio file. IT verified the timestamps. The metadata is clean." "Good," Victoria said. "Then we're ready." But as the elevator ascended, she felt the truth settle inside her. Readiness wasn't confidence. It was resolve. And that would have to be enough. The boardroom doors opened to a long mahogany table surrounded by men and women in tailored suits, some allies, some rivals, some opportunists waiting to see which way the wind would blow. At the far end sat Richard, his silver hair immaculate, his smile polished to corporate perfection. "Victoria," he greeted, standing as though he were civilized. "We're glad you could join us after yesterday's episode." The word episode hung in the air like smoke deliberately vague, conveniently loaded. Victoria took her seat without breaking his gaze. "Let's begin," she said. The chairman cleared his throat. "This emergency meeting has been called to address concerns regarding Miss Hale's recent conduct and its impact on the company's reputation." Murmurs, paper rustling, a few sympathetic glances. Richard leaned forward. "In light of the circulating videos, the public perception of instability, and the resulting dip in our stock, many of us feel it's time to consider transitional leadership." Transitional leadership, a euphemism for a corporate coup. But Victoria didn't flinch. "Not yet. If we're discussing videos," she said calmly, "we should discuss all of them." Richard raised a brow. "We've seen what's necessary." "No," she said. "You've seen what someone wanted you to see." She nodded at Megan. With steady hands, Megan plugged the flash drive into the boardroom display. "This," Victoria continued, "is the full, unedited video from the gala." The screen lit up. Her collapse played out exactly as the world had seen it, then continued. Gasps echoed through the room as Daniel appeared, moving with practiced precision, saving her life in front of hundreds. No chaos, no scandal, just a man doing the right thing while others froze. A few board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Richard's smile thinned. The video ended. Silence filled the room, heavy, charged. Then, Victoria spoke with the calm of a woman who had rebuilt herself too many times to fear falling anymore. "This version was blocked from circulation, deleted from servers, replaced with an edited clip designed to damage my credibility." "That's an outrageous accusation," Richard snapped. "Is it?" Victoria nodded again at Megan. Another file played, this time audio. Richard's voice filled the boardroom. "Tank the stock a bit. Fear makes the board compliant. Send the edited clip. We need momentum before the vote." The room erupted. Gasps. Whispered curses. The chairman's eyes widened with something close to horror. "Richard," he demanded, "is this your voice?" "The file is doctored," Richard insisted. "This is a trap. She's trying to frame me." "IT verified the file's authenticity," Victoria said, "and the routing logs show the edited clip was forwarded from your secondary office email at 9:42 p.m. She met his eyes. 2 minutes after I hit the stage floor. Chairs scraped as board members leaned forward, their expressions shifting from doubt to disgust. One of the oldest members, Whitman, a man who'd served since her husband's tenure, looked directly at her, his voice steady. "Is all of this true, Victoria?" "Every word," she said. "Someone manipulated the truth. Someone weaponized my vulnerability to seize power, and someone gambled with this company's stability to do it." She let her gaze rest on Richard. "That someone is sitting at this table." Richard stood abruptly, palms slamming against the table. "This is slander. I will not." "Sit down," Whitman interrupted, tone like a gavel. Now, something inside Richard deflated, pride cracking like dry earth. The chairman inhaled, then exhaled sharply. "We'll take a formal vote, effective immediately." One by one, board members cast their votes. Most didn't even look at Richard. When it was done, the chairman said the words with finality. "Miss Hale remains CEO. Richard Cole's employment with Hale Enterprises is terminated effective today. Security will escort him from the premises." Richard's face darkened, but he didn't speak. Men like him rarely did when the mask fell off. They simply burned beneath their suits. As security approached, he leaned close to Victoria. "You think you've won," he hissed, "but you've only delayed the inevitable." She met his venom with quiet strength. "No, I exposed the inevitable." He was escorted out. The boardroom door closed behind him with a soft click, one of the most satisfying sounds Victoria had ever heard. When the room finally cleared, Whitman approached her slowly. "Your husband would be proud," he said, "but more importantly, your daughter will be too." The words pierced something tender inside her. Later, alone in the hallway, she allowed herself a moment, a single breath of relief. Not triumph, not victory, just relief that truth had survived long enough to speak for itself. Her phone buzzed, a message from Daniel. "Did you tell them the truth?" She typed back, "Yes, and they finally heard it. His reply came instantly. Good, that's all that matters. But she knew it wasn't over, not truly, because justice wasn't a finish line. It was a promise you had to keep proving, and she intended to. The elevator doors closed behind Victoria with a soft hiss, sealing her in a cocoon of stainless steel and humming cables. For the first time in days, the tension coiled inside her body began to ease, not dissolve, not disappear, but loosen just enough for her to take a full breath. The boardroom battle was over. Her position was intact. The truth had won a round. But the city outside didn't know that yet, and the world of powerful men rarely accepted defeat gracefully. As the elevator descended, she watched her reflection, dignified, composed, but undeniably exhausted, not broken, never that, but worn in a way only those who have stood alone in the fire could understand. When the doors opened, cameras were already waiting. Someone had tipped off the press. Flashbulbs erupted like a swarm of frantic stars. Miss Hale, is it true the board stripped you of authority? Are you resigning? Did the collapse signal instability, mental or physical? The questions were sharp, jagged, designed to draw blood. Megan stepped between them, her voice rising. No comments at this time. Please step back. But Victoria did something unexpected. She raised a hand, not to shield herself, but to silence the chaos. And the reporters obeyed, if only out of shock. The board meeting is concluded, she said, her voice steady as polished stone. I remain CEO of Hale Enterprises. Our company stands firmly on truth, not manipulated narratives. The crowd exploded with more questions, but she didn't indulge them. She simply walked forward, leaving the noise behind like shed skin. Outside, a black sedan waited for her. When she entered, she found someone sitting in the passenger seat, James Harrison, the former corporate counsel who had left the company years ago after crossing Richard. James, she said, surprised. I didn't expect. You handled it, he cut in, his voice warm with pride, and I wanted to see it with my own eyes. How did you? A man keeps his ears open when he knows snakes are slithering. She exhaled a soft laugh. It's not over, she warned. I know, he replied, which is why I'm here. The AG's office will be calling. Market manipulation isn't just unethical, it's illegal. Richard's play crossed into criminal territory, and the evidence you revealed? That's not something the justice system ignores. A quiet, startled breath escaped her. She hadn't allowed herself to imagine consequences for him beyond corporate exile, but James was right, and perhaps, at some level, she had hoped for this, not revenge, accountability. The sedan dropped her at her building, and she stepped into the lobby to find another surprise. Daniel, sitting on one of the leather benches, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He stood quickly when he saw her. You're okay, he said, relief softening his face. I am, she replied, warmth blooming in her chest. Thanks to you. She guided him toward a quiet alcove near the elevators. They stood close, not touching, but with a sense of gravity pulling them gently toward each other. How did it go? He asked. They voted unanimously, she said. Richard is out. The tension in Daniel's shoulders finally dropped. Good. She studied him carefully. There was something in his eyes, a concern that went beyond her safety or stability. What's wrong? His jaw flexed. People are talking, Victoria. About me. About my job. About my daughter. She froze. Daniel, I'm not blaming you, he said quickly. But the more my name circulates, the more the world tries to make us into a story we never asked to be in. A narrative. A headline. And my daughter, his voice tightened. She's just a kid. Victoria's chest ached with empathy. I know. And I'm sorry. I never wanted to complicate your life. You didn't, he said. People did. He reached into his pocket and retrieved a folded piece of paper. I filed a statement, he explained, about what happened, about the truth. The paramedics asked me to. They said it might help counter some of the lies. She took the paper gently, her fingers brushing his. Thank you. You're welcome, he said. Then, softer, "Just promise me you won't let this place take pieces of you. Not the pieces that make you human." She smiled faintly. "I can't promise that, but I can promise I'll fight for the pieces worth keeping." The elevator arrived with a soft ding. Before she stepped inside, Daniel spoke again. "Victoria?" She turned. "Yes?" "You didn't deserve what they tried to do to you," he said, "and I'm glad the truth came out." Her heart warmed. Me too. But he wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket and handed her a USB drive. "Luis sent me another file," he said. "Something bigger. He said you should see it when you're ready." "Bigger how?" "It's a recording from 6 months ago. A board strategy session. Luis thinks Richard was planning this long before the restaurant, before the gala, before any of it." A slow chill crept up her spine. Why didn't he tell anyone sooner? Because power scares people, even good people. Their eyes held for a moment loaded with things neither dared say. Then he stepped back, giving her space. "Take care of yourself," he murmured. The elevator doors closed, sealing her inside with her thoughts, and the USB drive that suddenly felt heavier than anything she had carried into the boardroom. Upstairs, after she tucked Lily into bed and kissed her forehead, Victoria finally opened the file. The recording played through her speakers. Richard's voice, confident, calculated, outlined a roadmap for seizing control of the company, step by step, move by move. Her collapse wasn't an opportunity, it was a stage in his plan. "The public trusts her," he said on the recording, "so we have to make them question whether she trusts herself." Victoria felt something inside her go still, not defeated, not broken, still, like a hunter before a strike. This wasn't just a coup attempt. It was a campaign of psychological sabotage, character assassination, a violation of the very foundation she had built her life on. She closed the laptop slowly. Her reflection appeared faintly on the dark screen, strong, unwavering, and quietly furious. She whispered into the empty room, "This isn't over." Because now, it wasn't just about reclaiming her position. It was about protecting every woman who had ever been pushed off a ledge so a weaker man could climb up. It was about her daughter, her company, her dignity, and the man who had stood with her when everyone else stepped back. Justice had drawn its first breath, and tomorrow it would learn to roar. By dawn, the city had shaken off its night rain, leaving the streets slick and gleaming beneath the soft morning light. Victoria stood on her balcony overlooking Midtown, a mug of untouched coffee warming her palms. The recording she'd listened to the night before still echoed in her mind, Richard's voice, glib and confident, dissecting her leadership as though she were a chess piece he could simply remove from the board. But the echo didn't weaken her. It fortified her. Today wasn't just about survival. Today was about reclaiming what had been threatened and protecting those who'd been unwillingly dragged into her storm. When she arrived at the office, she walked with a steadiness that turned heads. Employees watched her, some with relief, some with awe, all sensing that something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't merely returning, she was rising. Megan met her at the elevator with red-rimmed eyes and a proud smile. "The Attorney General's office called," she whispered. "They want a meeting. Today." Victoria nodded. "Did you send them the files?" "Everything," Megan confirmed. "They said the evidence is substantial." Substantial. A polite word for damning. As they stepped into her office, Victoria saw a small bouquet on her desk, wildflowers, wrapped in simple brown paper. She froze for a moment, then gently opened the card. "For strength. Tomorrow needs you. D." Her breath softened. She didn't allow herself long to feel it, just enough for gratitude to settle somewhere deep and warm. At 10 sharp, her legal team assembled in the conference room. James joined via video from upstate, framed by shelves of leather-bound books. "Morning," he began, voice steady. "We've reviewed all the evidence. The AG's office wants to pursue charges for securities manipulation, intentional misinformation, internal sabotage, and unlawful distribution of falsified media." Victoria listened, her expression composed. "What do they need from me?" "Your testimony," James said, "and permission to subpoena the rest of Richard's communications." Megan looked at Victoria anxiously. "Are you ready for that?" Victoria thought of her daughter, of Daniel leaping onto the gala stage, of the way truth had been twisted, buried, manipulated. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." As they prepared for the statement, a knock sounded at the door. When it opened, Daniel stood there, Amara in school uniform beside him, holding a folder decorated in glittery stickers. "We brought something," Daniel said gently. Amara held the folder up. "It's for Lily. I made her a picture, and there's one for you too." Victoria knelt, opening the folder carefully. Inside were two drawings, one of Lily and Amara holding hands, smiling, the other of a tall woman standing in front of a building, a cape drawn around her shoulders, her hair flowing like sunlight. Above the figure, in wobbly handwriting, was a single word: brave. Tears pricked at Victoria's lashes. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means more than you know." Amara hugged her tightly before running to Megan to show her the rest of her pictures. Daniel lingered by the door, watching Victoria with a gaze that held both admiration and concern. "You sure you want to go through with all of this?" he asked quietly. "Going public, it'll get messy." "It's already messy," she replied. "I just want it to be honest." Daniel nodded. "Then you're doing the right thing." She held his gaze. "Will you stand with me?" "Always," he said, without hesitation. The AG's office was housed in a stately stone building downtown, its marble floors echoing underfoot like a cathedral of justice. Victoria walked through the lobby with her shoulders squared, Daniel just behind her, not close enough to draw attention but close enough to reassure her presence wasn't solitary. They led her into a private conference room where the Attorney General, a poised woman in her 50s, greeted her with a firm handshake. "Miss Hale," she said, "we've reviewed the evidence you provided. What you've endured is not just corporate misconduct. It's criminal. We intend to move forward." Victoria inhaled slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Tell us everything," the AG replied. So she did. She spoke clearly, calmly, carefully. She described the restaurant incident, the gala collapse, the boardroom ambush, the digital manipulation. She explained how every crisis had been twisted into ammunition for a narrative she never authored. She turned over the files Daniel and Luis had given her. When she played the 6-month-old recording of Richard's planning session, the AG's expression hardened. "This is premeditated," she said. "This is a conspiracy." By the time Victoria finished, silence filled the room like a held breath. Then the AG stood. "We will pursue full charges. And Miss Hale, your courage in coming forward will protect others who come after you." As they exited the building, reporters surged forward, microphones thrust like blades. "Miss Hale, are you pressing charges? Is Richard Cole involved in criminal activity? Did you falsify evidence to protect your position?" Before she could speak, Daniel stepped forward, not blocking her, but shielding her in the only way that mattered, with truth. "She didn't falsify anything," he said, calm and unwavering. "I was there. I saw what happened. She helped someone who needed help, and when she needed help, I stepped in. That's all the story was, until someone twisted it." The crowd rippled with surprise at his presence. Victoria placed a gentle hand on his arm, just enough to steady him, or maybe steady herself. "I'll make a statement soon," she said to the cameras, "and when I do, it will be honest. Please give us space until then." They made it back to the car without chaos, though murmurs followed them like shadows. On the ride home, Daniel exhaled a breath he'd been storing deep in his lungs. "Well," he muttered, "that was a thing." She laughed softly, tension easing from her shoulders. "You handled it better than most executives I've known." "Good thing I'm not one," he said. Then, after a pause, "You okay?" She turned to him, her voice low but firm. For the first time in a long time, yes. Back at her penthouse, Lily ran into her arms. "Mommy," Emily said people were saying mean things. Did you tell them the truth? Victoria kissed her daughter's forehead. I did, sweetheart. Good, Lily said. Daddy said truth makes bullies shrink. Daniel coughed lightly. I didn't say shrink. I said they get smaller when the truth stands up. Victoria smiled. Same thing. After dinner simple pizza shared at her kitchen island, Daniel stood to leave. Victoria walked him to the door. Thank you, she said softly. For everything. You don't owe me anything, he replied. You fought for the truth. I just didn't want you to fight alone. She hesitated, then said the words that had been waiting at the edge of her heart. I don't want to be alone. Not in this. Not after this. Daniel's eyes softened. Then you won't be. Outside, the night breeze carried the faint sounds of the city taxis humming, people laughing, life moving forward. As the door closed behind him, Victoria let out a long, steady breath. Justice was slow. Justice was quiet. Justice was imperfect. But tonight, justice felt possible. And for a woman who had spent months holding her dignity like a shield, that possibility was enough. Tomorrow she would rebuild. Tomorrow she would speak. Tomorrow she would rise without apology. But tonight, she allowed herself something she had been denied for far too long: peace.